Hey, the Smoke Meat Podcast is brought to you today by Joe's Underground in Augusta, Georgia. Joe's is located at the corner of 8th and Broad in the bottom of the Lamar building. Great little place. Jeremy and the gang make sure everybody feels at home there. Everybody always has a good time. They got great food, great drink, great people, great atmosphere. Right now they're closed because of the pandemic, but as soon as they open, we're all going to have a huge party there. You're going to have a great time. Remember, I goes to Joe's, so should you. Hey everybody, you're listening to the Smoke Meat Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Pittman. Today we've got a great treat. We've got author Neil Perry Gordon. This young man does a lot of historical fiction, has some really great work. So we're going to get this thing kicked off. How are you doing, Neil?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you, Brad. How are
Outstanding.
you?
I'm doing great, doing great. So I understand you've got a new book coming out that's making quite a stir. It has a pretty good buzz going on.
Yeah. Actually, it was released about a week and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
The book is called The Bomb Squad. It's Clash of the Patriots, Book One. I'm, there will be a book two at some point. I still got to get myself wrapped around the idea of writing another book about this topic, but it's a story that needs to be told again. This is my fourth book. I have three others that I published as well that are all available on Amazon. And the Bomb Squad is my newest. And yeah, I am getting some good buzz on it. I just got, yesterday, I just found on some mystery website, it's called. They named the top 10 books or 15 books of April 2020. And my book was number one on that list, and it was with some well-known writers as well. I mean, really amazing writers were on that same list with me. So that was really a wonderful opportunity and some recognition. And I also got a couple nice reviews as well, which are on the website. So yeah, it's off to a good start.
Outstanding, man. I hope they all do great. I'm looking forward to reading this. We've been so busy with this COVID thing, I haven't had a chance to read, blink, or do anything.
Yeah, I know you must be really working on both ends over there. I'm sure.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. What got you into writing?
Well, I've always loved the idea of being a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that was always gnawing at me, the back of my mind, thinking, wow, it would really be fun just to write novels, tell stories. And it was about 3 years ago when I finally took an online writing course. That wasn't really very good, but it was enough to give me a jumping off point, enough to get the engine started. And I've been off and running ever since. So this is my fourth novel. A fifth one's coming out in June, and another one just finished up the first draft will be out sometime this fall. So, yeah, I've been working hard at it ever since I first got that bug.
Man, that is awesome. My hat's off to you for being able to write. I love being a storyteller. As a comedian and as a podcaster, that's one of my big things. Plus, just as my personality in general. My wife picks on me all the time because I've never met a stranger. We saw a guy in Walmart one night who was looking at griddles, and the name of the podcast, Smoke Meat. I cook a lot.
Right.
And I went up to a complete stranger at 9 in the evening and talked to him for 45 minutes. And I'm not sure, but I think I sold him both griddles. So, I talk, I'm a storyteller. And the bad part for me, and I wish I was so much better at it, but I'm horrible at it, is the mechanics of the writing. Sitting down and doing the process. My hat is off to you for being able to do that.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Yeah. Well, the process is important. The process, how you actually get the words on the paper, and then the structure and developing the characters and the plot and making sure that people stay interested and making sure you add enough twists and turns and conflicts so people don't get bored. And what I like about writing is the investment that people have to make when you read a book. If you think about other forms of art and compare it to writing, for example, if you go to a museum and say you just go to the museum, you spend a couple hours in the museum. And you go through, you might see a couple of dozen different paintings, and you go home and you're done for the day, and a little bit of an outing. Or you go to a concert and you spend 2 hours at a concert, you listen to music, and that's the time you invest in it. And of course, you may have loved it, and it was something that made you happy. But when you read a book, you invest many hours, and it can take over days or weeks or months to finish that book. So the investment of time that someone takes to read one of your works is immense. And then when you hear back from them, comments or criticisms or critiques about the book, or they want to talk to you about the book or talk to you about the characters that you wrote about, that's, to me, is very rewarding. And that's part of the writing process that I didn't understand until my first book came out, and I started getting people who would comment to me like how much they loved it and how much it meant to them. So that has been, the wonderful part about it, and it keeps me moving and wanting to keep writing.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I've always loved doing is reading. Because of Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, and the Electric Company. I learned to read by myself when I was 4, and
Yeah.
I've loved to read ever since because in my mind, a good book, you see it in your head. You make your own movie, and it takes a gifted author to be able to do that. There's books that I've had to read when I was younger, when I was in school, that I still read to this day over and over. I think one of my favorite ones, don't know if you've ever heard of it. It was written in the 60s. It was by a guy named Pat Frank called The Last Babylon.
I don't believe I know that book.
It was, I remember in ninth grade, we had different books we were assigned, and I never read most of the books because they just weren't my cup of tea. And I would always ace the test. But I remember I read this one 5 times in the allotted time we had to read it. It was about a life in a small Florida town out in the middle of nowhere after a nuclear war. Just a really, really good book. I mean, the guy did a lot of research and put a lot of time into it. And when the test came, I made like a 30 on this thing. And my teacher came to me after class and said, what's going on? Why didn't you do good on this test? I said, I don't know. I actually read this one. And she's like, huh? And I said, what? And she said, I'll tell you what, how about if I give you an oral test? Well, okay, cool. And we sat there and talked about the book, and I aced it. And just a good book that can capture your imagination, just, man, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing for sure. Well, can I tell a little bit about what the Bomb Squad is about?
Yeah.
Well, it's called the Bomb Squad: Clash of the Patriots, Book 1. And it begins at the stroke of midnight on June 30th, 1916, when there was a devastating explosion at a place called Black Tom Island. That was an armaments depot, and it was situated about a few thousand feet away from the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. And that night, when that explosion went off, it rocked New York City awake. And the Bomb Squad is the story of 2 German immigrants during the outbreak of World War I, each willing to put his own life on the line in order to achieve a glorious victory for the cause. So on one side, we have Dr. Harold Schwartz. He's the administrator of Ellis Island Immigrant Hospital and a German spy who's loyal to the fatherland, who, along with his father, a dealer in lethal weapons and a lifelong friend of Kaiser Wilhelm. So both father and son, they're hell-bent on distracting the Americans from entering the war. And meanwhile, we have the British Secret Intelligence Service, known as the SIS, who recruited the highly regarded New York City police detective Max Rothman. They wanted him to assemble a team of German-speaking specialists to be known as the Bomb Squad. So the mission of the Bomb Squad is for Detective Rothman and his team of handpicked men, each with a certain expertise, to investigate this sudden surge of German espionage activity that's wreaking havoc along the eastern seaboard, which includes finding the source of smuggled explosives being tucked on board steamships crossing the Atlantic. So the Bomb Squad follows the exploits of Dr. Schwartz and Detective Rothman through an interconnecting tale of love and loss, friendship and betrayal, stretching from the American shores to the epicenter of German power, its capital, Berlin. I think the Bomb Squad is a riveting, page-turning tale of the clash of patriots, each believing in their own cause during a time when the world is at war. That's a little synopsis about what the book is about. And what I'd like to do for your listeners, I need reviews. Reviews help me a great deal. They help sell books. So the more reviews I have, the better. So I'm willing to offer a free download of my book, a free PDF, to any of your listeners who send me an email. and I'll send back a free PDF copy of my book. And all I ask is that they read it and write a review on Amazon. That's it. And I could give you my email address if that's okay.
Definitely. You go right ahead. I'm actually going to do this after we get off here this evening.
All right. So it's neilperrygordon@gmail.com. And I'll spell it. It's Neil, Neil, Perry, Perry, Gordon, Gordon, neilperrygordon@gmail.com. So send me an email. I'll reply with a PDF, and you could then download it and just go to my website on Amazon to the book page for The Bomb Squad by Neil Perry Gordon. You'll see, write a review, just click on it, and don't be stingy with the stars. 5 stars are always the best, and definitely will help promote the book. And of course, the most important thing is that you like it, and I think that you would.
Yeah, it sounds like something I'm going to enjoy. You probably just took up my entire evening.
Okay, you got it.
Which is great because, I mean, that's kind of what we're doing right now.
Absolutely.
Man,
I also have my other books are also on Audible too. If you're interested in listening to books on Audible, my first 2 books are on Audible. This book is going to be recorded and it'll be available a couple of weeks on Audible. And my third book too is also in the process of being recorded. So I'll have 4 books that are being recorded right now. 2 are recorded, 2 are available, and 2 are being recorded. So it's available in ebook, paperback, and Audible book.
Outstanding. We talked a little bit about the process. I just beside myself that people can sit down and do the process. I've actually started writing a book, but before you get excited, it was almost 20 years ago when this thing started. The original manuscript that I started is actually on 3 1/4 inch floppy, if that says anything.
Okay. Yeah, that says a lot.
Do you remember an author named Louis Grizzard? He actually wrote for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, wrote little stories about the slice of life things from when he was growing up. Been a long time, and maybe a Southern thing. But the book is actually kind of a little collection of stories like his, and the name of it is actually, and this isn't me messing with anybody. This is the actual name of the book. It's called "Put Your Teeth In, Daddy, the Preacher's Coming." But my process is so horrible. It's like I say, it's actually literally been almost 20 years since I started this thing, and I've got like 7 stories actually on paper. So
yeah, it takes a discipline for sure. You have to, a discipline and a motivation that you want to keep plugging through. I mean, I write every day, and it's not what I do. It's not my full-time job. I don't make a living as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
So I do this in between everything else that I do. So it is it's a process for sure, but it also takes discipline. It takes motivation. You got to get up early in the morning. I know what you do for a living is challenging with your time. But I wake up at 4 a.m. every day to write. So I try to make it happen that way.
Yeah, outstanding. Yeah, for everything I've heard and read, is like I said, it's having that discipline and having, time to sit and write, and the discipline to sit and do it. When I'm writing jokes and comedy and things for my stand-up act, I mainly write them in my head and I'll jot down notes, but I've got friends who do it that every day they set aside, 30 minutes. Okay, I'm going to write, even if it's garbage, I'm writing jokes.
Right. Yeah, you need to have that. You need to have that muscle memory. So you get down into that rhythm, and you're able to continually work at it. And after a while, now I'm doing this for several years and doing it every day for several years. You get a rhythm. You get a muscle memory. You get something that you can. You have a method of how you write. Malcolm Caldwell wrote a book about being an expert, and he says I think it's 1,000 hours it takes to become an expert. And he gives examples of the Beatles and all these famous people and these great accomplishments and how they became experts by just spending time in what they do over and over every day, keep going at it. And he sort of pegged it at 1,000 hours, which was an interesting concept. And he, of course, he creates his thesis and he backs it up with examples. So it's interesting. But it's true. I think if you spend time every day and whatever you do every day, you become good at it. I mean, you're a paramedic. I don't know how many years you've been doing at it, but I'm sure, after a while, you get yourself a rhythm and you get yourself good at it and you become an expert.
Yeah, I've definitely got my own style doing it. May 30th will be 30 years.
Well, I think you put in 1,000 hours.
Yeah, I'm getting there. It feels like I've put them in the last 3 weeks, but
I'm sure you have. Yeah.
but oh well.
Absolutely.
But no, you know, I try and instill in my kids, the love for reading, and both my kids read. I've got one that's 19 and one that's 17, and it's funny because they don't read the same things I do, which I'm almost a 50-year-old man, and they're teenage girls. So, and it took me a while.
I'd be surprised if teenage girls and a 50-year-old man would read the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. And it took me a while to understand. They're reading. Let them read. This is their thing. It's not what you're going to read. But it's just a gift that I felt like I could give them from a young age because, like I say, I love to read. It's just if you get the right book or just even a short story, it just takes you away.
Yeah, it's an escape.
People that say, "Oh, the book's better than the movie," and for the visual, for me even, I love reading a book more than a movie. Like the Schwarzenegger movie that came out years ago, The Running Man.
Mm-hmm.
I read the book, a couple years later. I didn't realize Stephen King had written it under the name Richard Bachman, and I found the book and I read it. I'm like, holy crap! If they had done the movie the way the book was, it would still be in theaters first run. I mean, the book was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's hard to capture 80,000 words on the screen. That's why, with the advent of Netflix and all these, these series now that go on for, 10, 12 episodes, now you can capture a story in its entirety, when people start streaming these episodes. So, yeah, it makes a big difference when you have more time to tell the story because, people want to get to know the characters. I mean, if you think about all the books that you've read and all the books that you've loved, it's basically more the characters than it is the plot. We're always more, that's what we remember. All these famous characters. You think of Star Wars, you think of Luke and Leia and Hans, and you think of the characters. The story was secondary. That's how you make these connections, people to people.
Yeah. And that, to me, that's just always been the thing, it's, you can see different worlds, you get to know different people, and it's just, man, it feels like such a gift. And now with audiobooks, I like listening to some of them while I'm riding to work because I work about an hour away, and that helps out a lot. Have you heard people starting to do radio plays of different books? Like the old time serials, but
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, those are neat. It's bringing back the old things. They say everything old does become new again.
Yeah, well, before TV, there was radio, still storytelling, not much different than it is today. Of course, we don't have the visual with that, but, everyone used to sit around the radio and listen to the story and play the visual in their heads. That was the first step away from just novels in terms of listening to someone else tell the story to you. So, but even before that, stories were told mouth to mouth. I mean, mouth to ear around a campfire. I mean, that's how history was passed on. Before the written word, it was told. So it's a natural thing to be a storyteller.
Yeah, definitely.
Part of the human condition.
Well, now, if I had to, look back and say, okay, what does a 20-year-old Neil Perry Gordon like? What does he like to read? Who were some of the folks who kind of shaped you a little bit, just with their writing?
Yeah, a lot of the classics. George Orwell, J.D. Salinger. Those were the ones that really moved me. Even Stephen King. I think one of his books. I was probably 21 years old when The Stand came out.
I love that book.
And that was like I remember being in college in the dorm, and all of us were reading the book, and we tried to call Stephen King. I said, let's call him, talk to him. So he still lives in Maine, and I think he lives in Bangor, Maine. So we couldn't find his phone number, but we were trying to call him because that was like the hot book at the time. It's still a great book, classic of all classics. So yeah, those are the stories that excited me in my 20s.
Yeah, I remember when
tales about people struggling, about I still attract me. The books I even write today are all about they're mostly male orientated. I write what I like to read.
Yeah.
So it's about struggles, it's about conflict, it's about adventure, and I write what I call organically, which means I don't write with an outline. I have an idea of the story, and I have an idea where I want it to end. So I have an idea of the story itself and where I want it to end up. What happens in between, I don't know what's going to be until I actually sit down and write it. So I figure if I'm surprised as I write it, my reader will be surprised. I can't work with an outline, though I tried. And some very successful and amazing writers write very extensive 100-page outlines for their story. And that's just not my way. I just write, this organic way, how I call it. And it's more of, it excites me doing it that way. I enjoy it. So I do what I like.
Yeah, and for me, that's the way to do, like the podcast. As you notice, that's kind of how I do it here. I could get on and, have 20 questions already written out and come on like, so Mr. Gordon, where are you from? In my nice radio voice. And instead, I know I'm going to introduce you. We're going to talk about, what you do. And, we're just going to kind of roll from there, and it works, and as I had a guest that we talked the other night, and he told me, he said, most podcasts are just big long interviews. This one's basically two guys talking on the phone with a bunch of people listening in. I said, yeah, exactly. And to me, that's what I like to listen to, what I like to read, things that, are planned out, but not necessarily down to the last detail. Kind of like taking a road trip from New York to LA. Okay, some people plot every second, and other people say, I just got to go west.
Exactly.
I like just going west.
I hear you. That's how I like to do it.
Yeah, because if I try and, I've tried to, write some of my stories and some of my comedy things with an outline, and the one part of my brain says, I need this outline. I need to do it like this. Because this is what I was taught in 7th grade English. Do an outline, then do your rough draft, and then do this. And for me, when I try and follow that, I get so stuck in the outline that, like I say, that the stuff that just comes naturally just kind of gets pushed off to the side because it doesn't fit that perfect little outline.
I hear you. Absolutely.
Yep. But now I'm going to make sure that I put on here, when I do my show notes, I'm going to make sure that I put out that, people do need to email you about your book so they can get their free copy, because I'm looking forward to reading this thing. I really am. Like I say, you've probably just eaten up my entire evening, because when I read, I sit down. I'm kind of a one session reader. I'll read until it's done, unless it's like something like The Stand, which, if you can read The Stand in one sitting, you have done something amazing.
Well, my book is only 320 pages. The Stand is 800 pages. So, yeah. It's not quite the same dose as The Stand.
Yeah.
So it's not as voluminous as The Stand is. But yeah, I'll be happy to hear your comments and let me know what you think. Hopefully you'll speak right through it.
Yeah, I want everybody listening, please download this thing and please review it, because like I say, it's going to do nothing but help everybody. Good reviews, and it's always
it's
a
just
wonderful
giving.
thing.
It's not like when you sell a book today, like if you're not a Stephen King or a big time author, you're selling a book on an ebook, for example, for $3.99 or $2.99.
Yeah.
So it's not something you're going to become rich from, but it's something that I'm rich from the experience of people getting back to me. That to me is just so enjoyable. So that's why I do it. I like hearing people's comments. I like hearing what they thought of the book. So that's the reward for me.
Yeah, and it's funny when I got into stand up, almost 30 years ago. I've had one paying gig my entire time, and I made $50 on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do little videos on YouTube, little character videos that I'm actually filmed down here in my studio, just me and my camera. And like I say, you read about people that, my daughter's watched this guy that puts on makeup. That's what he does. All he does is puts on makeup, and he'll do things just sitting at his desk. He made a gummy bear out of Fireball whiskey one time, a great big one, and stuff like that. And this guy has millions of hits, just boom, boom, boom. My videos, they're a piece of me, which his are a piece of him. Ain't my thing, but whatever. That's his thing. Right. And he's getting paid for this stuff. He's making money. He is what the YouTube millionaire.
Yeah. People get followers. They can make money from it.
And I know I will probably never be that, but I do it because if I can make one person laugh or one person feel good or help them escape for just a minute, just it's a great thing. It ain't always about the money.
Right, and you're a giver, and what you do for a living. I mean, getting out there and what you're especially doing now, you're on the front line, so you're one of the heroes. So hats off to you.
Your books are the same thing. Like I say, you may never get rich from them, but you're putting out what makes you feel good and what you think is going to make other people feel good too, and that's a gift to the world. I mean, that's just everybody can't do it. It's hard to be a good storyteller to begin with, and then to have that discipline to sit and do it. And my hat's off to you. I'm so happy that you're doing this.
Well, thank you.
But we're going to wrap this thing up. Neil Perry Gordon, I've had a ball talking to you. I'm so looking forward to reading this book.
Thank you, sir.
And you're welcome back on the podcast anytime. Whatever. It be 5 minutes, be 5 hours. I don't care. I'm easy, man.
Well, I'll reach out to you for the next book. I got my next book coming out in June. It's called Hope City, which is about a small Alaskan town up in Alaska during the summer of 1898, during the gold rush.
Nice.
And so that'll be out sometime in June, and I'll be up in Hope, Alaska in July. Hopefully, God willing, I can get there. I can get out of the New York metropolitan area and get to Alaska. The whole state of Alaska has about 330 cases of COVID-19. In my little town in New Jersey, which is about 30 miles west of Manhattan, we have nearly triple what they have in the whole state of Alaska. Man. So it's nice and it's safe up there. So plus, I'm looking forward. I have lots of friends. I go up there every summer, and so I wrote a book about the town, the history of the town where they live in. So that should be exciting if I get up there. So when I get that book out, I'll reach out to you again and make an appearance.
Well, how close is that to Juneau?
It's far from Juneau.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's several. If you're flying, it's probably a couple hours of flying. Where I'm going is just outside of Anchorage, about an hour and a half drive from Anchorage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, enjoy while you're up there.
Thank you.
I've always wanted to go, would love to go. May actually get to do it one day.
You should go.
Definitely.
You definitely should go.
Well, all right, everybody. That wraps up this episode of the Smoke Meat Podcast. I'm going to definitely thank Neil Perry Gordon for being in here today. Thank y'all for listening. Make sure you subscribe and share. This is Brad Pittman. We're out.